Hello, good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. Today, we're doing episode 295. We're going to talk about history. I'm going to take questions that you all have asked in the comments. But before we do that, let me greet as many of you as I can in the next couple of minutes. Who's there on the live stream, on the live chat? IMAP Painter, Dhruv Duria, Sentin SP, Samriddhi Mishra, Jai Shri Ram, Satellite. Welcome. Vladimir Putin, Ritvik Sardeshai, Ashwini, Ima Painter, Mystic SK, the Great Gatsby, Stanzin Dorje, Abhyuday Singh, Mr. Saxena, God Emperor, Doom, Critical Thinker, Ayush Singh. Who else do we have? The Great Gatsby, Bruce Wayne, Ansh Ashwini, Mayank Chaudhary, Anonymous Scientist, Bonsoir, Abhi Chandel 05, Alex, Mayank Chaudhary, injured soccer player from Richmond Hill, Ontario, Canada. I hope your injury gets well and you deal it goes away as soon as possible. Uday Kiran, Geopolitical Dubey, good evening from Indore as always. Atman Moksha, wise idiot. Beneath, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Very well, sir. Very well. Priyanshi Sood, Reinhard Moses, Riser, thanks. Oh, excuse me. Ayusin 439, hello. Ajinkya Pawar, The Great Gatsby, Shanks, evening. God Emperor Doom, Ayush Singh, Amisha Mishra, hello. Vladimir Putin once again, hello. Manisha Cardoso, namaste. Krishna Raghunath from the Surinamese, Netherlands, hello. Baron Zemo, Beneath, Samriddhi Mishra, hello. Ritvik Sardesai once again. KS Anime Edits, hello. Beneath, Gagan Arora, IPK underscore 1S, Gesundheit, thank you. Netizen, Pratik Vora, Shashank Kausik, Sujit Kundu, Shanks, Rinki Chaudhary, Random Skull, good to see you, sir. Rohan Jadavkar, Ajinkya Pawar, Gagan Arora, A&R Studios, that is Ansh. Is it cold over here? Yeah, it's kind of cold. Ken Pax Shield Kudnabind, yes, thank you. Ken Untriggered 69, Tanmay Freedom from Outcome from Canada, and everyone else. Okay, so Ankita is here and everyone else. So I'm going to take questions from the comments that you've asked in the comments. Vanshu Kalem, Rakesh Mistry, Ajinkya Pawar. All right, so let's get going with the questions. I'm not taking questions from the live chat right now. At the end, if there's time, I'll take some questions from the live chat. But let's get going with the questions for this episode. What's the first question? I'm going to take questions about history, world history, Indian history, and that's about it. So, first question is by Swapnil Mishra. What exactly was life like in the now submerged landmass that once connected Britain to continental Europe before it disappeared beneath the North Sea? There used to be a landmass that connected Britain to continental Europe until about roughly 10,000 years before today, during the last ice age. So what is today Britain, those islands, it was once a peninsula of Europe. It was connected to the mainland of Europe. Just like at that time, Sri Lanka, present-day Sri Lanka, which is an island, was at that time, same time, it was connected to mainland India. It was an extension of India. It was kind of a peninsula of India. So that's how it was. So because there was an ice age at the time, the sea levels were about 120 to 150 meters below what they are today. Significantly lower than what the sea levels are today. Today it's risen significantly, which is why you had so much more land mass that was available to you, but most of it was frozen, especially in the higher latitudes. So this now submerged land mass was called, is today it's called Doggerland. Let's Google it, shall we? So that you get an idea of what I'm talking about. It was called Doggerland. Doggerland. Yeah, it was a large land area, northern Europe, now submerged beneath the southern North Sea. So here's what it kind of looked like. As you can see, what is today Britain and Ireland was part of this extended peninsula, which was all above the ocean. And you had various kinds of flora and fauna that inhabited this region. You also had humans, obviously. you would so what kind of flora and fauna? The flora and fauna of Europe. You would have mammoths, you would have wolves, you would have various bovine animals, aurochs. What sort of humans did we have there? Uh, about 10,000 years ago, you would have Homo sapiens. You go back, when did this landmass form? I mean, it was always there, but when did it come above the sea level? Maybe 40,000 years before today, roughly. Maybe before that. Uh, so at some point in time, you would have had Neanderthals who lived there. But when this went under the sea, at the time, you would have Homo sapiens, ancient Homo sapiens who would have lived there. So it was a significantly extensive area of land. What was life there like? It was very prehistoric life. It was a hunter gatherer life. There was no agriculture. There was nothing that we would today recognize as civilization. It was people living in small groups, small bands, hunting, gathering, living hand to mouth, wearing skins, living in caves, eating essentially flesh of animals and whatever roots and fruits and whatever else they could forage, that sort of thing. That was the kind of life that humans lived in Doggerland at that time. And you do find artifacts from time to time that wash up on the beaches. And yeah, so that's how it was. Yeah. So even if you look at, you know, ancient India from about 10,000 years ago, you will find that there are so many. If you go to the Gulf of Khambat region, okay, Gujarat, well, there are at that time. See, in Europe at that time, you had people who were living the hunter gatherer lifestyle, eating, hunting animals and foraging for roots and shoots and whatnot. In India, in the Gulf of Khambat, you have a Gulf of Khambat archaeological complex, which is a network of ancient cities, which lies on the ocean bed, on the seabed, and it lies at a depth of around, I don't know, 50 to 100 meters below the sea level, which means that it was last above sea level about 10,000 years before today. So in ancient India, our ancestors, they built cities that are now submerged under the sea. And even in southern India, if you go to the eastern coast of southern India, Tamil Nadu, etc., you will find that we are discovering ancient cities that date back 11,000 years. Whenever there's very low tide or whatever, sometimes some ancient temples emerge out of the ocean and then are submerged again. So our civilization is incredibly ancient. And we were building cities at the time. Like cities, what do those cities look like in the Gulf of Khambat region? First of all, we have Dwarka. Dwarka it went down, I don't know, maybe 8 or 5,000 years ago. Whatever little carbon dating has been possible over there does seem to indicate a date of about 8,000 years before today, a piece of wood at least. And ancient Dwarka is laid out just like in Saraswati Sindhu era city, metropolitan city with a grid structure and well planned thing. And even the Gulf of Khambat archaeological complex cities are planned like that, just like the later Harappan, so-called the Harappan era cities, exactly like that. So, well, incredible, isn't it? So that's how ancient our civilization is. Okay, Krishna of the Surinamese Netherlands says, which Iranian ethnicity comes closest to the ethnicity of Bharatvarsha? The Elamites, the Medes, the Parthians, or the Persians? First of all, is Bharat one ethnicity? If you ask the foreigners, if you ask geneticists, etc., they will say that Bharat is multiple ethnicities. Two major ethnicities, they will say Dravidians and Aryans. People like me are the evil Aryan invaders, descendant of ancient white people who brought the evil Hinduism and evil Sanskrit and evil caste system with us, with the ancestors. And the original Indians are the Dravidians. Anyway, so if you ask foreigners, if you ask even Indian researchers, they will say that India itself is multi-ethnic. That's what they will say. But genetics tells you that even in northern India and southern India, if you do a DNA sampling and if you do see the test results, you will find that India is essentially the same genetics. Even within North India and South India, people who look so apparently superficially different, the genetics are very much the same. So anyway, let's consider India or Bharatvarsh to be one ethnicity. Okay. So then the question arises, which Iranian ethnicity comes closest? Ancient Iranian ethnicity. Today, you don't have all these ethnicities like the Medes, the Elamites, the Parthians, Persians. So, first of all, let's see. Okay. What am I doing? Give me a second. Let's first of all Google this, the Persian, ancient Persian ethnicities and where they were located on the map of Persia. Okay. Uh, Ancient Persian ethnicities. Okay, so let's go to images and hopefully we will find something. Ethnicity map. Okay, ठीक है. Do it this way. Ethnicities in Iran. Not this. I said ancient. Wikipedia seems to. No, I think it's Google's fault, not Wikipedia's fault. This is a slightly. Okay, they are just giving you like very recent stuff. Okay, so now let us go to Meads Marhashi. You haven't heard the word Marhashi, right? Parthia Ilam map. Okay, now hopefully it gives us a better thing. Not Marathi, Marhashi. See, even Google seems to have slightly low IQ these days. Anyway, so where we Persis, Babylonia, Media, Persia. Okay, this gives us a better idea of things. Ilam is over here. As you can see, Ilam is in the northern part of the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. Then you have Media, which is further north of Ilam. Then you have Persia. Then you have whatever that is, Arya, Parthia, etc. Marhashi map. What about Marhashi? Marhashi map. Ilam and Marhashi map. Okay. Do we have something? Yeah, Marhashi. Okay, we have Marhashi here. We have Ilam here. This is about 1500 BC or something. Maybe 2000 BC, maybe even before that. Meluha is us. Meluha is India. Then Marhashi and Meluha actually once allied in a war against the Assyrians, Akkadians, whichever it was. So you had all these ethnicities in Persia. Okay, first of all, Marhashi is a little older than that. Parthia and Media map. Okay, Persia, Persis, Media. Okay, so we have Parthia, Bactria, which is Gandhar and west of Gandhar. Bactria is Gandhar, west of Gandhar is Parthia. Persia is west of Balochistan. Okay, and Media is northwest Persia of today, northwest Iran of today. So now the question, okay, after seeing the map and getting some context, okay, now that we have it, let us discuss which ethnicity comes closest. So if you assume that Bharatvarsh is divided into two ethnicities, Aryans and Dravidians, in that case, there is this hypothesis which has no proof. Okay, there is something called the Elamite Dravidian, Elamo-Dravidian hypothesis, which is that the people of Elam, west of Balochistan, ancient Elam, they were somehow related to the so-called Dravidian people of India, apparently. This is a hypothesis which has zero proof, but it's a very famous and influential hypothesis for some reason, without any evidence whatsoever. So the evidence is that apparently the people of southern Iran look quite dark-skinned compared to people from, let's say, other parts of Iran, compared to people from Gujarat, Rajasthan, or Punjab or whatever. The people of the Balochistan and that region, they look quite dark-skinned, similar to the people of southern India. So maybe there is some kind of connection. So that has given rise to the Elamo-Dravidian hypothesis. So according to this hypothesis, the Elamite ethnicity is very close to the so-called Dravidian ethnicity in India. And the Parthians and the Medes and the Persians are closer to the Indian Aryans, which is the people from northern and western India. That's what it says. That's what the hypothesis says. Is there any proof that bolsters this hypothesis? None whatsoever. That's how it works these days. That's how it works. You just create a consensus of scholars, and then without proof, you can start treating hypothesis as gospel truth. So overall, if you were to ask me, the Parthians, the Persians, the Medes, even if you assume that the Elamites are different, at least these three ethnicities, they are very similar to the other Indian Aryan ethnicities, Indo-Aryan ethnicities, which is the different linguistic groups, which are the same people essentially. So that's how it is. It's complicated. I would say India, Persia, very similar historically. In the past 1500 years, things have changed in Persia and the ethnicities have changed because the Turks brought in lots of foreign uh, individuals into Persia and settled them in Persia. People from the Caucasus region, people from Turkic speaking parts of Central Asia were settled in Persia. And that changed the ethnic makeup of Persia. Today, if you look at Persia, only half of the people of Persia are actual Persians. And even those Persians aren't pure Persians anymore. Very few pure Persians would remain. And the pure Persians would have looked 1500 years ago like us, at least the people of northern and western India. And things have changed now. So, yeah. Okay. Hrithik Pawar says, why did two great kings who ruled almost the same extent of the empire, Chandragupta Maurya and Samudragupta, adopt very different systems of administration? Chandragupta Maurya had a highly centralized administration, while Samudragupta relied on vassals and a more decentralized structure. What were the reasons for this difference? So the two empires are roughly 800, 600. So Samudragupta, when did he rule? Sometime in the 3rd or 4th centuries AD, right? Around the 4th century AD. Chandragupta Maurya would have ruled roughly 800 years before him. 800 years makes a huge difference. Huge difference. Let's understand the context. Chandragupta Maurya was the founder of the Maurya Empire, correct? And he did this by overthrowing the Nanda Empire through warfare and with the help of his mentor, the great Vishnugupta Chanakya. So, when Chandragupta Maurya overthrew the Nanda Empire, he took over the administration of what used to be the realm of the Nanda Empire, that particular part of Bharatvarsh. Chandragupta Maurya, during his lifetime, did not rule the entirety of Bharatvarsh. He did not. He ruled a subset of Bharatvarsh. And the Nanda Empire had ensured that it was a centralized administration with no vassals. So Chandragupta Maurya took over and he essentially strengthened that structure and made it a completely centralized structure. At that time, there were no challengers in that particular region to his rule. So there was no need to placate some of the rulers and turn them into vassals. There was no one to challenge him. So he became the sole ruler. And eventually his grandson Ashok extended the rule to the entirety of the subcontinent, including Gandhar and so on. And once again, his rule was unchallenged because there was no one to challenge him. There were no rulers. See, when the Greeks, when the Seleucids handed over Gandhar back to India, to the Maurya Empire, they handed it over without any governors or any vassals of theirs. So it came immediately under central administration from Patliputra. And similarly, other parts of India, for example, after the Kalinga War, Kalinga came under direct administration because it defeated Kalinga. There was no one to stand now against him. So because of the way things went, because of the way historical events happened, it so happened that the Mauryan Empire was completely centrally ruled. Now, when it comes to Samudragupta, he expanded his rule to the whole of the subcontinent through warfare. Samudragupta made this very famous conquest of southern India. It was a dual conquest. Two vectors of conquest. One was overland, the other was naval. So at the same time that he was conquering southern India on land, he also had a naval conquest going on in parallel. And at that time in southern India, you had many kingdoms and dynasties that were there for a significant period of time. And if you were to kill those kings and take over rule, start ruling centrally, that would make the people very unhappy. And if people are unhappy, they are really hard to rule. Correct. Which is why Samudragupta adopted the policy of just turning those kings into vassals. So they will continue ruling, but they will rule in my name. They will rule in my name. They will no longer be Maharajas or whatever. They will simply be governors who will rule in my name, and they will pay me tribute every year as per my requirements. I will tell them how much tribute to pay me, and they will pay me that tribute every year, and they will honor me. So that's how it went in the Gupta period, and that's why you have these significant differences. So it was pragmatic, it was practical. Chandragupta was a practical ruler. He knew that he could kill off all these kings and then rule by force, but it would make the people unhappy, and you don't want an unhappy population. You don't want that. You want the least amount of friction. You want to achieve the objective of unifying the subcontinent. There are multiple ways of doing it. So depending on the times and the situation and the circumstances, you can adopt different methods, whatever is the best for today's time. So during Samudragupta's time, it made sense to just let those kings continue ruling, no longer as kings but as vassals, as governors. That was the best possible uh, option, and that's why he adopted that. Shubh says, how was ancient India at the forefront of science and technology along with great cultural emphasis? This destroys the communist narrative that culture and science can't flow together. I don't know what the communists like to say, but you can't have scientific advancement without the right kind of culture. You see, a culture that allows questioning, a culture that allows skepticism, a culture that allows you to question ideas that have been, you know, regarded almost sacred. If you don't have that kind of culture, science will never progress. You will never have scientific advancement. So India was that kind of a culture where you could question openly. Obviously, you had to do it in a proper way through the scientific method and so on, but you were allowed to question everything. We had all these different philosophical schools of thought, which were the precursors of scientific schools of thought, in which you had different models of the universe. Some of these were purely materialistic, like the Charvaka school of thought, in which there is no Atma, there is no God, there's nothing. The only thing that exists is what you see and touch and feel, purely materialistic. That's one way of looking at the world. You had other ways of looking at the world as well. You had yoga and Sankhya and Mimamsa and Bodha and Jain and Vedanta and so on. All different models. All of these represent a different model of the universe. And these were often wildly contradictory to each other. And they were all part of our culture. So everything, all these different uh, schools of thought and schools of inquiry were perfectly embraced and welcomed in our culture. That's why you had so much scientific advancement and development. Secondly, you had a great education system. It was entirely subsidized by the state, by whoever was your king or emperor. It would be entirely subsidized by them, by the king and the emperor or the queen or whoever it was. Which is why, and these we had a great multi-tier education system, which also once again ensured that science and technology were developed as much as they could. Which is why even 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, during the so-called mature Harappan phase, you had a fully urbanized civilization with incredible scientific advancements. You had, harbors at what Lothal and Dholavira that compare that are comparable to the dockyard at Vishakhapatnam that can accommodate aircraft carriers. That's how massive these dockyards were 5,000 years ago. You had drainage systems that still work. You had flush toilets. You had works of hydro engineering, advanced hydro engineering. You had standardization of weights and measures. Why was it like this? Because our culture was a culture of excellence. It was a culture of advancement. There was a huge emphasis on science and technology, and also on the spiritual aspects of life, which is why we had so much art, such great temples. All of this went hand in hand. So today the narrative is that uh, you know if you want scientific advancement, you have to kill culture, you have to kill religion. It's like having a body with just one hand and one leg. That's what it does. So India understood the concept of harmony and balance, and all aspects of life are important. The religious and spiritual aspect is important, the cultural aspect is important, science and technology is super important, without which you will never have great good living standards and so on. So that's what we understood, and that's what has been destroyed. And today the narrative is that you have to be rational, you have to be a rationalistic person. Then only you have to disregard all religion, you have to stamp out religion, which is the opium of the masses and all the nonsense. So this is nothing but an attempt to destroy India's culture. It has nothing to do with science and technology, but they are using the garb of scientific thinking and scientific temper, that idiotic term, to try and disrupt our culture. Feminist Slayer says, why was the USSR considered a superpower? What were its capabilities in projecting power and controlling the global economy? Well, we had two superpowers in the 20th century. And neither of these two superpowers controlled the global economy. They controlled portions of the global economy. Between them, they controlled essentially the entire global economy, between the two of them. But neither of them controlled the entire global economy. Now, the question is, why is the USSR considered to be a superpower? Why not just a great power? Why a superpower? What were its capabilities overall? It's not only about power projection, it's not only about economy, it's about everything. It's about the whole spectrum of capabilities that we have to look at. So, first of all, the USSR in the 20th century had the world's largest standing army. More than 5 million soldiers could be deployed on demand. Maybe 5.5 million soldiers could be deployed on demand at the peak of its powers. I'm talking about. You had phases of time when you had maybe fewer soldiers, but at the peak of its power, it had about 5 to 5.5 million soldiers who could be deployed and pressed into service on demand. That's massive. That's just the regular forces. You had reserves. The USSR had reserve forces, about 35 million reserves, manpower. Enormous, massive military power. That's the conventional military power. They had a huge industrial base, massive industrial base, high technology, which produced all the weapons the USSR needed. So they had massive conventional capabilities. The industrial base ensured that whatever weaponry was required was available as much as you wanted. That's why the USSR was frightening to its adversaries. That's just the conventional capabilities. The USSR had massive stockpiles of nuclear weapons. And that's why it essentially counterbalanced the US. And because of that, you had the concept of mutually assured destruction. Both the nations could entirely annihilate each other. So once again, it perfectly counterbalanced the United States. Economically, it was the world's second largest economy after the US until the 1980s, when Japan surpassed the USSR and set off alarm bells in the US, which is why the US did some tweaks, which ended up destroying Japan's economy. And today, Japan is almost like a middle-income nation, no longer a high-income nation. The Americans ensured that happened. So now, back to the USSR. It was the world's second largest economy for the most part of the second half of the 20th century. The USSR was an autarky. Every raw material, every resource you could imagine was available in its own territory. It did not depend on anybody for imports. Everything, minerals, fertilizers, chemicals, iron ore, agricultural products, whatever they needed was available on their own territory. No need for imports, oil, gas, whatever. Then when it comes to naval capabilities, they had a massive navy. They had submarines, some of the best submarines in the world, nuclear submarines that could launch ballistic missiles and various kinds of missiles. And the USSR's navy patrolled every ocean in the world. Okay? It patrolled every ocean. So global power projection capabilities through the navy and through the ballistic missiles, the ICBMs that they had. When it comes to power projection, once again, they had military bases in various parts of the world. They had military bases in Africa, in Ethiopia, in Sudan, most likely in Egypt for a while. Until the 1950s, they had bases in Egypt. They had bases in Syria, Tartus, Latakia. One of those is still there. They had bases in Libya. They had bases in Cuba, in Venezuela. Until the 1950s, they had bases. They had military bases in China as well. Vietnam as well, because of the ideological coherence and so on. So they had significant power project. I'm sure I've missed some out, maybe somewhere in Africa, some more, but you get the point. They had power projection capabilities everywhere. They also had bases in Eastern Europe through the Warsaw Pact. And they had many countries that were ideologically aligned with them, and they had these treaties like the Warsaw Pact, which brought the nations together under the leadership of the USSR. You had other nations like Vietnam and etc. also, which were completely ideologically aligned with them. So all these things taken together is what made the USSR a superpower, right? Amisha Mishra says difference between Creole populations and mixed race once New Spain. New Spain. So when you talk about New Spain, you don't really think about Creole populations there. New Spain is essentially Mexico and the territories north of Mexico today. So in the 1500s, after Christopher Columbus discovered what he thought was India, but it ended up being the so-called New World. After that, the Spaniards were very, very quick in colonizing these parts of the world, and you know they had a territory in Mexico. From there, they expanded northwards into much of what is currently the U.S., California, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, all of that. You had various expeditions which took place initially in the first half of the 1500s. You had the Narvaez expedition, Panfilo de Narvaez, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, Estevanico, all these fantastic individuals. Panfilo de Narvaez, well, his story ends very quickly, but whatever. So that was in the 1520s to 1530s, the Narvaez expedition. Then you had the Coronado expedition, Francisco Vasquez de Coronado. With him, there were wonderful people like Fray Marcos de Niza, and they went to Cibola and Quivira and so on. That was in the 1540s. And through this expedition, and there were many more, okay, so, and these are not nice things actually for the natives. So through these expeditions and so on, they slowly made their way into what is now the United States, and they colonized all these parts of the what is today the US. And all of this was eventually called New Spain. Mainly, New Spain means Mexico. Now, the populations in New Spain. So what happened is that when they did these expeditions and when they conquered, for example, the Aztec Empire in what is now Mexico City, Tenochtitlan, then there was further conquest of the Inca Empire in the west coast of northwestern coast of South America and so on, Peru, etc. Then what happened is that there were these tremendous outbreaks of epidemics which killed a significant amount of the population. There were massacres and genocide also done by the Spaniards, and the enslavement of the natives, and the imposition of Spanish religion, which is Christianity, on the natives by force, of course, by destroying the native temples and building churches on top of them, for example, Mexico City and so on. And eventually the subjugated peoples intermingled with the conquerors and gave rise to a new race of people. Even if you go to Mexico today, there's a small minority which is still pure white, which looks white, and most people are still brown, and most of them have mixed. And these people aren't called Creole; they are called, what are they called? They just called Mexicans, I suppose. So what is Creole then is the question. So the Creole populations don't really have much to do with what was called New Spain. That term Creole is not used for these mixed race populations. There was a term called mestizo that was used for a while and so on. But when it comes to the word Creole, it's generally used for native people who intermingled with the French colonizers, not the Spanish colonizers. It's the same thing. Mixed race people with mixed languages. But it's only used, as far as I am aware, for natives who intermingled with French colonizers. For example, New Orleans, Nouvelle Orleans, which is Louisiana. Yeah, it's the mouth of the Mississippi River. So if you go to New Orleans, there's still a French quarter which was rebuilt. Actually, it's not the original French quarter, but the people who lived there, the mixed race people who were a combination of French colonizers and black slaves and whatnot, they were called Creole people, and their language was kind of a mixture of French and African words. And another place where you have Creole is in Mauritius, Île Maurice. So the Creole they speak there, it sounds French. The accent is French. The grammar is French. The structure overall is French. Lots of French vocabulary. But you also have Indian words Hindi, Tamil words, and you also have some African words sprinkled into the mix. So that also is called Creole Mauricien, Mauritius Creole. People of Mauritius are fantastic, amazing people, outstanding people. So if you hear them, if you listen to them speak, they'll sound very French. It's like it's a French person speaking. You look at them, they look entirely Indian. And the way they eat, they're more Indian than me. They'll sit on the floor and eat rice with their fingers. I can't do that. They can. So yeah, anyway. So that's what that's how I understand Creole. Creole is French origin. It's native people. So it's not just the language that is called Creole language, but maybe even the people are called Creole people. Yeah. Okay. Okay, next. Yajnavalkya says, who are the Samaritans? Is Samaritanism considered a sect of Judaism or an entirely different religion? Did Christians treat Samaritans the same as other pagans and thus almost wipe Samaritans out, unlike the more favorable treatment given to Jews? Very interesting questions. Questions. Who are these Samaritans? How many Abrahamic religions actually exist? Now, we all are reasonably familiar with the Abrahamic religions here in India. We have been exposed to at least a couple of those. Not a very good exposure, but whatever. Not the most pleasant exposure historically. Today's context is different. I'm talking about historically. So, we are aware of three Abrahamic religions: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And as far as we know, Judaism is the original Abrahamic religion. Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham was a Jewish prophet, wasn't he? The Muslims also consider him to be a prophet of Islam. They also consider Jesus to be a prophet of Islam, and so on. So, yeah, okay. But there's another Abrahamic religion, which is Samaritanism. So, what is all this about, right? So, first of all, there is a place called Samaria, and the ancient people who lived in Samaria were called Samaritans, and their descendants are also called Samaritans today. So now, first of all, let's go and Google this. Samaria. What is Samaria? Samaria. Oh, look at this ancient place with ruins. So it's a Hebrew name, Shomron, etc. It's a central region in Israel. So if you go to the map, okay, if you go to map, you will see that the central part of Israel, between the West Bank and to some extent the sea, from the river to the sea, is Samaria. So this region essentially, pretty large region, that's Samaria, and there is a specific place in the center somewhere, which is also called Samaria. Okay, I'm not sure I'll be able to locate it over here, but it's the central region of Israel, and it has been described variously as something that begins with from the west bank of the river Jordan to a certain part of Israel, and some historians have said it goes all the way to the sea. So that is what Samaria is historically. That was the region of Samaria. Today, no, I don't think anyone calls it Samaria today. And the people who lived there were called the Samaritan people. Now, what did they believe in? What was their belief system? It was very similar to Judaism, but slightly different. They believed in the God Yahweh, that the Jews believe in, Yahweh. They also regard the Torah as their holy book. But beyond that, there are some differences, which even I don't know really what exactly the differences are. I haven't studied this in detail, but the point is that there are differences. There are other books and religious beliefs that differ from Judaism. So a significant part of their belief system is identical to Judaism, the belief in the God Yahweh, and the fact that they regard the Torah as the central holy book. But beyond that, there are divergences. The details you can look up if you're interested. There are divergences, which is why most scholars regard Samaritanism as a separate Abrahamic religion, distinct from Judaism, despite them sharing the same God in the Torah as well. Still, there are some differences. Just like people say that Buddhism, Hinduism are different, and Hinduism and other Sikhism, Jainism today, everything is different. Similarly, even Samaritanism and Judaism are different, apparently. Now, Samaritan, there is something called the Good Samaritan, right? Everyone uses this term good Samaritan for someone who does something out of the generosity of their heart. So I think it was a parable that was allegedly said by Shri Jesus, Mr. Jesus, the parable of the good Samaritan. So even during Shri Jesus's time, which is 1 AD or whatever it was, at that time the Samaritans, in the first 30-40 years of the first century AD, even at that time the Samaritans were regarded as a separate religion from the Jews, and they were not entirely friendly with each other. They were kind of rivals or hostile to each other, Samaritans and the Jews. And Shri Jesus gave this parable that, some Jewish guy was injured, and priests and other people walked by him just not caring, but a Samaritan came and helped him and gave him water and okay, okay, we're back. So apparently that's what happened. And so that person is called the good Samaritan. So a Samaritan who was hostile to the Jewish people still was nice to a Jew and took care of the person and took him to a hospital or an inn or something and ensured that person survived, that sort of thing. So that's the good Samaritan tale or parable. Now, so the Jews in the 5th or 6th, whichever century BC, they were forced into exile, into the Babylonian exile, the rivers of Babylon, that song. And then after a few years, after a few decades, they were allowed back into Judea, into what is presently Israel. And then they came under, Judaism. It came, the Jews dispersed, the diaspora and all. And they, at various points in time, they came under Christian rule and also under Muslim rule, as we know. And the Christians and the Muslims, they mainly regarded the Jews as people of the book, which is why the Jews were given a special protection and special privileges. But the Samaritans were somehow not considered people of the book, and they were treated more harshly. During the Byzantine Empire, they were treated harshly. During the Muslim rule, they were treated harshly. There used to be massacres of the Samaritans. There used to be forcible conversions of the Samaritans, which is why you have very few Samaritans who survive today. The Samaritans were not treated as badly as the pagans. What does paganism mean from a Abrahamic perspective? Today, even Indians use the term, we are pagans. Why do you have to define yourself from someone else's worldview? Why this inferiority complex? We are pagans. We are us. Anyway, from an Abrahamic perspective, paganism means polytheism. Very evil. The worst sin you can imagine. The polytheists shall burn in all eternity, for all eternity in hellfire, apparently. That's the fate that awaits us. Unless we embrace a superior religion or something. Whatever. So the Samaritans were not treated as badly as the polytheists, as the pagans. So the best treatment was given to the Jews. The second best or second worst treatment was given to the Samaritans, and the worst treatment was given to polytheists. That's how the cookie crumbled. That's how the dice rolled. Next. Geopolitical Dubey says it is said that sage Shalihotra was the first veterinarian who lived during Ashok's rule. Can you shed some light on this? Okay, so Geopolitical Dubey has been asking this question for a very long time, so I thought I'll take this up today. Look, there's very little that's known about sage Shalihotra. Shalihotra is said to have lived sometime during the Mauryan era, maybe the 3rd century BC or something, which kind of possibly coincides with Ashok's rule. So Shalihotra was a veterinarian. He compiled a treatise called the Shalihotra Samhita, I think, in which he describes all kinds of ailments and diseases and problems that can afflict mainly two families of animals, which is the cattle, cows, buffaloes, etc., mainly cows, obviously, and the horses, the equine animals, the horses, because these are the two most important animals, and I'm sure also the elephant, yes, elephant. So that's what he did, and he was very knowledgeable about this. He knew exactly all the diseases, all the troubles that could afflict these animals, and he knew how to, and he prescribed various solutions, surgical, non-surgical, etc., solutions to various problems. So it's a pretty thick thesis in which he has given a tremendous amount of knowledge. And obviously he did not invent all of these treatments and so on ab initio from scratch. He also learned this from somewhere. It's an old tradition that was going on, but he's the first person who compiled all this knowledge into one book, as far as we know. Maybe there were others, but all that has been lost. So that's the deal. I mean, even during the Mahabharata era, it is said that Nakul and Sahadev were well versed in the treatment of various animals, the cattle and the ashwas, I believe, cattle and the horses, elephants. What was it? Something like that. So I would not say that Shalihotra was the first veterinarian. I would say that he's the first known veterinarian. And he probably lived in the, like I said, around the 3rd century BC. Well, if you want to talk about people who knew a lot about horses, I can tell you about Kikuli. Kikuli was a horse master, a horse trainer, whose mother tongue was Sanskrit, but who lived in what is now Anatolia and Syria. He belonged to the Mitanni Empire, and he wrote a horse trading manual in the Hurrian language, but some terms he had to use Sanskrit terms because those terms did not exist. Technical terms did not exist in the Hurrian language. So he had to use his mother tongue, Sanskrit. So he also knew a lot about horse training. He knew how to take a regular horse and transform that horse over a period of 2-3 months into a properly trained war horse. And obviously there will be treatment and whatnot involved in that. So this knowledge was there with us for a very long time. The Mitanni rulers, they are known to have been ruling the Mitanni King Empire around 1300-1200 AD, BC. That's at least about 1,000 years before Shalihotra. And they would have reached that part of the world a few centuries before that. So around 2000 BC, we would have had a high quality understanding of how to deal with horses, treatment, training, everything. So this knowledge has been around for a very long time, but Shalihotra is the first person that we know of who compiled all of this knowledge into a single volume, textual volume. I am sure this knowledge was around for a very long time, thousands of years before Shalihotra himself. But yeah, he's the first person that we know of, the original veterinarian who wrote a treatise, a proper treatise in which everything, all the information, all the knowledge was compiled about horses and cattle, and possibly also elephants. And this Shalihotra Samhita was translated into all kinds of languages, into Arabic, into Persian, into Tibetan, into Chinese, and whatnot. Everyone took the knowledge. Yeah. And now it is world knowledge. Okay. Nirvana Shanks says, should King Sudas of the Bharat clan, after whom the subcontinent is traditionally named after the Bharat clan, should he, Sudas, King Sudas, be called the father of Bharat? Or should Chandragupta Maurya, who first politically united the subcontinent, hold the title? Okay. Does Bharat need a father? So whoever is the gentleman who is considered to be the father of the nation, that person certainly I would not agree is the father of the nation. The father is someone who creates, right? The father is somebody who creates something new. Our fathers created us, right? So did the gentleman who is considered to be the father of the nation create Bharat, really? So then the question is, should somebody be given this title? And does somebody actually deserve it? So King Sudas, did he create Bharatvarsh? To some extent he did. To some extent. He, for the first time, I would say, united. He essentially was the Chinggis Khan of his time. He defeated everybody and brought everybody in the at least large parts of the subcontinent together under a single dominion. Kind of. Genghis Khan was also like that. I mean, he was fighting he was up against everyone alone, and one by one he defeated everybody. One by one. Sudas, he did not defeat everybody one by one. He defeated them all in one shot. So there are some similarities between Sudas and Genghis Khan, but we don't know that much about Sudas. But what Sudas did is that after defeating all the adversaries and expelling them out of India, he then chose to be magnanimous and all embracing. So he said that, look, we have a certain set of gods, the Arya gods. Indra, and Indra was the primary god, the most powerful god of that time for our ancestors. And you had various other gods, Mitra, Varuna, all the Vedic pantheon of gods. And the Bharat clan, they had this ritual, the Yagna ritual, in which various offerings would be done to the gods through the medium of Agni, who was the messenger of the gods, and Agni is a major god himself. So Bharat said that, okay, I have now conquered this entire region, and he told the people of the region that your gods are welcome to the Yagna. So we will not just pray to our gods, your gods are also welcome, and you can all give your offerings, and we will all be one people now. So whatever cultural difference we may have, let's combine all of that and make it a single culture, a unified culture. And that is what gave rise to Bharatiya culture. So to a very large extent, I would say Sudas does deserve, at least way more deserving than whoever it is. I'm not sure who it is, but whoever is considered to be the father of the nation today. Sudas, sure. Was there someone before Sudas? I'm sure there was, but yeah, let's talk about Sudas here. Way more deserving, Sudas. Chandragupta Maurya did not politically unite the subcontinent. He founded the Mauryan dynasty, which eventually unified the subcontinent through Chandragupta's grandson Ashoka Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya planted the seeds, and he did conquer and unite a significant part of the subcontinent. But he did not conquer the whole of the subcontinent, less than half. His grandson finished the job. He unified Bharatvarsh properly. So more than Chandragupta, I would give it to Ashok. More than him, I would give it to Ashok. Okay. Amisha Mishra says, the Mongols nearly conquered half the world. Why isn't Mongolia a great nation today? India was the most advanced civilization in the world. Why are we so mediocre in third world today? Same question can be asked. The same question can be asked, right? Because everything rises and falls. If you lower your standards, you're going to decline and you're going to lose your greatness. So Mongolia did conquer half the world. Actually, it conquered, I would say, if I think about it, slightly more than half the known world. Probably a good amount more than half the known world. So at the time, we weren't aware of Australia, we weren't aware of Antarctica, we weren't aware of North and South America. We only knew Eurasia and Africa. And he conquered more than half of Eurasia. Genghis and his descendants, they cumulatively conquered more than half of Eurasia. And they did this because they were superior. They had superior strategies, superior tactics, superior organization, superior administration, superior communications, and superior logistics and everything else. Right? That's why they were able to conquer. Superior discipline, superior standards, everything. That's why they were able to conquer half the world, more than half the world. Then standards declined. The empire fragmented. There was infighting. The sons and grandsons of Genghis Khan, they went and they were ruling far apart territories, and they eventually started drifting apart, and they no longer recognized or regarded their blood ties more important than their personal ambitions, and that's why there were conflicts. Some of them became Islamized and Turkicized. And what was left behind in Mongolia, eventually the root, the heart of the empire was Mongolia itself. And over there, political power no longer was that powerful because of decline. So there was a decline in standards, in everything else, and that's why today Mongolia is, well, what it is today. It is not regarded as a great power or even a power that matters in any consequential way today, unfortunately. Right? The same applies to all fallen civilizations or empires. Because of a decline in standards, you no longer maintain the high standards that took you to the pinnacle of the world. You no longer maintain those standards, so obviously you're going to decline. And after you decline, they'll be conquered by others, and that's what happened to Mongolia as well. So Mongolia was conquered, essentially vassalized by the USSR, and half of the land was taken by the Chinese because of these things. So that's it's a cautionary tale for everyone. It applies to us as well. Look at our standards today: super mediocre, super low standards, super third world standards in India today. You have, it is what it is. So my point is, the Mongols were great, but today they don't go around claiming that we were the greatest, blah 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 blah, we were number one, blah blah blah. But in India, we have people who are simply content to rest on the laurels of your ancestors 1,000, 2,000 years ago. What are you all doing today? What are your standards today? Introspect. Okay, Rinki Chaudhary says, why did Prithviraj Chauhan let Muhammad Ghori free and not capture him even after defeating him in the first battle of Tarain, 1191? Well, first battle of Tarain, 1191, it is known that Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Muhammad Ghori, and Muhammad Ghori was captured. His army, the Turkic army, was smashed by Prithviraj Chauhan's army. And Muhammad Ghori, well, was he captured? Or was he? No, he was not captured. He was allowed to escape. I mean, he tried to escape, and the pursuit wasn't that serious. So he was allowed, he essentially was able to escape and return to occupied Gandhar. Right? He wasn't captured. He was allowed to escape. If we had pursued him seriously, like whatever happens when we're going to capture him, he would have been captured. But he was allowed to escape all the way from Tarain, all the way to Gandhar, occupied Gandhar, Afghanistan. So yeah, I think we were not serious. Okay, this guy is, we were able to defeat him. He doesn't matter anymore, and let him go. Who cares? I think that was the deal. Why did Prithviraj Chauhan do this? Now, we don't know him personally. We don't have any podcasts or interviews with him, so we don't know. But we can guess based on culture and civilization. See, let me give you a very strange example. You all will find it very strange, but let me give you this example nonetheless. One of the greatest novels in French literature is considered to be Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. In English, you would say Les Miserables. Let me Google it and let me show you. It's called Les Miserables. Okay. Les Miserables is it's not a novel, man, not movie. Novel. Okay, it's a novel by Victor Hugo, greatest novel of the 19th century, and so on. It was published in 1862. It's about France, and of course there are movies made about the book and so on. So if you go to images, so who's the protagonist? The protagonist is a guy whose name is Jean Valjean. Okay, the protagonist, his name is Jean Valjean. He is a convict. He is a petty criminal who has been jailed for stealing a loaf of bread. And he eventually goes on parole and he does some other small crime. And then there is the antagonist of the novel is Inspector Javert. Inspector Javert is a man of the law. He believes that the law is the only thing that keeps society, working fine. And his life's purpose is to uphold the law and to punish all criminals. So he's a very upright man, very serious man, no sense of humor. His only mission in life is to uphold the law. And he goes after, so Inspector Javert, let me show you what it looked like, okay? Just so that you have an image in your mind. In the 1998 movie, Javert, Inspector Javert, extremely serious man, no sense of humor, but not an evil man. He is doing the right job. He's pursuing the purpose of his life. And you have Jean Valjean. Jean. That's Liam Neeson. This gentleman. Okay. Valjean. Okay. So this is the protagonist, and Javert is the antagonist. So Javert pursues Jean Valjean his entire life for decades, and eventually, in the end of the novel, you have Javert, who is trying to put down a student insurrection, And Jean Valjean has been discovered again. He wants to put Jean Valjean in jail. And Jean Valjean captures this guy in front of the students. He says, I'm going to take him to the street corner and shoot him. He takes him to the street corner, fires a shot in the air, and releases the guy. Says that you leave now. Once this revolution is over, you can come and imprison me. I am tired of running my whole life. You can put me in jail. I'll be done with it. And then Javert is wondering, what do I do with this guy? I have been pursuing him my entire life because he was a criminal. And every time he has done something good with his life. He became the mayor of a town until I discovered it. He's a criminal. Then he went to a different place, escaped from that place. Again, he did something good with his life. And here, he should have killed me, but he let me go. So Javert believe that those who break the law are evil people. And that's why they have to be punished. But this man, Jean Valjean, is not evil. He's not evil. So how can I punish him? But if I don't punish him, I'm breaking my own principles. So Javert goes and kills himself because he is totally conflicted. So he was a man of principles, Javert. Prithviraj Chauhan was a man of principle. He believed that you have to behave in a certain way in the world. You should be inflexible in your behavior. You should go by the dharmic principles, what he believed to be the dharmic principles, which means be fair, be magnanimous, be just. If somebody has been defeated, you let them go, you don't capture them, you don't kill them, and so on. Was it right? Obviously, it was not right. To be entirely dharmic, you have to follow the principles of Shri Krishna and the way he dealt with the enemies during the Mahabharata. So if Prithviraj Chauhan had borrowed a leaf from the Bhagavad Gita and from Shri Krishna's life and actions, he would have dealt with Muhammad Ghori differently. But Prithviraj Chauhan believed that he was right, and his way of behavior and the actions he took were correct. You should not shoot a guy with an arrow in the back. The guy is escaping by horse. His army has been destroyed. He's distraught. He's heartbroken. It is wrong to put an arrow in a man's back when he's escaping. Let him go. That maybe was his idea of being dharmic. It was obviously completely incorrect, because you should never let a snake go. The snake will come back tomorrow and bite you. Much worse. So that's what I would say. Prithviraj Chauhan was a great man, but sadly he made a mistake, which ruined India to a very large extent. Yep. So hopefully we can learn the lessons from these examples. Yajnavalkya says, why did wild aurochs get extinct in India and in the entire world? What is this aurochs thing? Ye sab kya hai? What is aurochs? Let me show you. Aurochs were a breed of wild cattle, a species of wild cattle. Aurochs. Aurochs. That's what it looked like. This is what the aurochs looked like. As you can see, this is a comparison with a human being, a standard average sized human being. And the aurochs were pretty large. Bos taurus is the wrong cattle to see, because the Bos indicus is more close to aurochs. So we have the aurochs. Once again, if you look at size, you have this aurochs. And the aurochs, they went extinct sometime in the 16th or 17th century AD, which is just like 400 years ago. These were wild cattle, first of all. Okay, these were wild cattle, and they lived in grasslands and lightly forested lands all across Asia and Europe, across Eurasia, including India. The closest modern day animals that are closely related to the aurochs are the Zebu cattle of India. The closest living relatives are the Indian Zebu cattle. What does that look like? Let me show you in case you're not aware. Zebu cattle. That's what Zebu cattle looks like. That's not a great example. This is a great example. Your standard Indus Saraswati Valley cattle. Massive beasts. So these are the closest relatives of the aurochs that you have today. Zebu cattle. Okay. Now the question is, what happened to these aurochs? So they were found in India. They were found across Eurasia. They were found in Europe as well. And it is said that in India they went extinct 3,000 years ago or something. 3,000, 4,000 years ago, something like that. The reason they say that is because it's very difficult to differentiate between the bones of zebu and the bones of aurochs. They are very similar, almost the same. So maybe it's not 3,000 years ago. Maybe it is 200 years ago. I don't know for sure. But officially, it's around 3,000 years ago that they went extinct in India. And they went extinct in Europe, in different parts of Europe at different times. But the last known herd went extinct about 300-400 years ago. Now the question is, why did they go extinct? So first of all, Indians were the first to domesticate the aurochs. And after domesticating the aurochs, they gave rise to a new breed of cattle, which is the zebu cattle, the great Indus Saraswati Valley region cattle with the big hump and the big dewlap under the chin, and those horns, the cattle that you find in the Saraswati Sindhu seals, those cattle. So after the domestication, what happened is that apparently the natural habitat of the aurochs reduced because that was taken over by the domesticated cattle, which were their relatives. And there was interbreeding between the domesticated cattle and the aurochs, which diluted the gene pool. And human presence spread across the world, especially the subcontinent, which is maybe why the aurochs lost their natural habitat, and it was all encroached by humans and human engineered cattle. And maybe that's why the aurochs disappeared eventually in the Indian subcontinent. And in various parts of Europe, once again, you had human encroachment into areas that were naturally, traditionally aurochs, the natural habitat of aurochs. So you had all that land taken over by humans, and there was hunting of aurochs as well. As the aurochs populations declined, aurochs became a prestigious hunting animal. So only kings and royalty were allowed to hunt aurochs, and that was a great sport in those days. It was called game, and eventually the aurochs was hunted out of extinction. There may have been diseases also that were introduced by humans, and so on. So it's multiple factors that combine together to make the aurochs extinct. But is it really extinct? The Indian cattle are very closely related to the aurochs. They are nothing but domesticated versions of the aurochs, which then eventually gave rise to various different breeds. So what was the ancestral population of the Indian cattle? It was the aurochs. So I would not entirely say that it's entirely extinct. They still live in Indian cattle. But yeah, that in that size and shape and form, it's no longer extant today. Right? All right, next question. Saloni Mishra says, I recently discovered your channel. Well, welcome to the channel. I want to ask you a question. Or of course, that's what we do here. Why did the Indo-Aryans migrate into the Indian subcontinent during the decline of the Indus Valley civilization? And what motivated this movement towards an environmentally degraded region? Fantastic question. So since you're new, and I'm sure there are lots and lots of people who are new to the channel and who have not seen my older videos about this issue. So let's take this a priori from the beginning. So the question is, why did the Indo-Aryans migrate into the subcontinent during so-and-so time? Why did they migrate? So the presupposition you're making while asking the question is that there was a migration of these foreigners who came into India, right? If you had asked me this question 20 years ago, if somebody else would have asked this question 20 years ago, they would have said, why did the Indo-Aryans invade the Indian subcontinent? Because 20 years ago, it was called the Aryan invasion theory. Today, they have reformulated the theory and rechristened it into the Aryan migration theory, Indo-Aryan migration theory. The Aryan invasion theory has now been converted into the Indo-Aryan migration theory. Why was it converted into the Indo-Aryan migration theory from an invasion theory? The original theory was that about 1500 BC, a bunch of white-skinned barbarians came from Central Europe and invaded India. Okay, around 1500 BC. At that time, India was a land populated by Dravidian people who are a different race and ethnicity and culture. They are dark-skinned. The Aryans were white-skinned barbarians, evil people. And they invaded India They subjugated the peaceful, highly cultured, highly evolved, highly civilized Dravidians and oppressed them, and they relegated them to the south of India. And then the Aryans settled in the former lands of the Dravidians, and then they introduced their evil foreign religion, Hinduism, their evil foreign language, Sanskrit, and the super evil caste system into India. And then they sat on the banks of the Saraswati and wrote the Rig Veda. That's the original theory, the Aryan invasion theory. Now, the problem with this theory is that there is no evidence of invasion. There is no there is no evidence whatsoever, not even a scratch of a record in the archaeological evidence that indicates there was any kind of invasion any point in time in India. Because when there's an invasion, it leaves archaeological traces. When there's an invasion, there are massacres, there are battles, people die, they're dumped into mass graves. You will find all these things, nothing is there. You will find battlefields with broken bones and broken arrows and broken whatnot, broken equipment. You will find burned cities with layers of ash and soot and dust and whatnot. You find nothing like this in India. Anywhere around 1500 BC, nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing. That's why this invasion could not work. So now they have modified it to say there was a migration, a peaceful migration of these evil Aryans into India. Now, the problem with this Aryan migration theory is that there is no evidence of migration again. If these migrants came at so and so time around 1500 BC into India, you will see evidence of a migration in the archaeological record. How so? You will see a sudden cultural change. The Dravidians maybe had a certain way of building, constructing buildings and all. Now suddenly you have a new culture that comes in. You will immediately see in the archaeological layers a new culture that suddenly appears. Because obviously it's a different culture. The white European Aryans were obviously very different from the black Dravidians, right? According to the theory. So you should see a significant, sudden change in the archaeological record culturally, cultural artifacts. The Dravidians maybe worshipped a certain set of Dravidian gods. Suddenly you have the appearance of new gods in the archaeological record. Do you see that? Do you see that? You see nothing. You see no discontinuity in the archaeological record. Right? Nothing. My question is, where's the evidence? Now, some people, the great Gatsby, for example, will say, but we have genetic evidence. I have Aryan genes. I have Aryan genes in my body. I have a large number of Aryan genes. R1A1A gene I have. I did my genetic test. I have the R1A1A gene in my body. It is Aryan gene. So Aryan invasion happened or migration happened. Arey Baba, first of all, what is R1A1A? Is it a gene? It is not a gene. It's a haplogroup. What is a haplogroup? What is it? A haplogroup is a lineage. In Sanskrit, we call it vansh. A haplogroup is a group of people who are alive today on the surface of this planet who all share a specific genetic mutation that happened sometime in the past. So the R1A1A haplogroup is a set of people, males who are alive today on the planet, who all share the same genetic mutation that originally happened about 15-20,000 years ago in one single person who was also a male. How do I know it's males? Because it's a Y chromosomal haplogroup. Y chromosomes are passed on from father to son, not from father to daughter. Because daughters don't have Y chromosomes, they only have XX, right? We know that. Males are XY. So R1A1A, which is also called RM17 today, it's a Y chromosomal haplogroup. The original initial mutation happened about 15-20,000 years ago. And we can kind of date how old it is based on various factors. We'll not go into that. So today, R1A1A, how large is this haplogroup? How many individuals? More than 1 billion. It's the world's largest extended family. And who are these people? These are mostly the speakers of the Indo-European languages. There are two parts of the world where you have huge concentrations of R1A1A people. One is in India, one is in Eastern Europe. Yeah, yeah, it is what it is. So there is clearly some kind of genetic connection. But now, tell me something. How do you know this is the Aryan haplogroup? How do you know it's an Aryan family? It seems to be kind of prevalent where you have speakers of Indo-European languages. You go to southern India, you have as much R1A1A as in northern India. You go to some so-called tribal groups who are allegedly called Adivasi groups, Irula, etc. They have way more R1A1A as a percentage of the population than many parts of northern India. How do you explain that? Go to Manipur. They don't speak a Indo-Aryan language, right? They speak a Burmese language, Tibeto-Burman language. They have significant R1A1A. How do you explain that? So how do you make the claim that R1A1A is an Aryan gene or haplogroup? What is the evidence? Evidence is zero. Whatever evidence you have, yeah, it's circumstantial evidence. It's not evidence that will stand in a court of law. It is not evidence that measures up to the scientific method. Right? So once again, and my question is, if you have a certain genetic makeup in your body, how does it indicate that it is Aryan or Dravidian or whatever? So the question arises, where did R1A1A originate? This first person in whom this genetic mutation happened. Perhaps it's India, perhaps it's Central Asia, perhaps it's Europe, wherever. Okay? It doesn't matter. But whoever the first person was, do we know what his language was? Do we know what his religion and culture was? Do we know that? We don't know that. Go to Turkey today. If you do that DNA tests of Turkish people, the results are extremely inconvenient and extremely embarrassing because it's more than 90%, 95% Greek and Armenian, right? But they speak the Turkish language and they practice the Islamic religion. So despite having Greek DNA, they have a totally different culture, language, and religion. So what is the connection between DNA and language, culture, religion? Zero. I can give you so many examples. So this entire genetic angle is misleading. It is deliberately introduced to mislead most people. And the people who can't think deeply, who are incapable of critical thinking because of what the education system has done to you, you will be the victims of this. You have to think deeply and thoroughly and consider all the scenarios to understand how they are misleading you. My point is, there is zero evidence of any Aryan invasion or migration into India. Zero. Show me one piece of hard evidence that can stand up to scrutiny in a court of law or per the scientific method. Show me. You'll find none. But they will appeal to authority. So many eminent scientists agree, which is why it must be true. All the books they write about this, which is why it must be true. Romila Thapar is a proponent of this theory, so it must be true. So Indians are people who are very deferential to authority, right? This is what's drilled into us through the education system, and that's why it's so easy to mislead Indians. My point is, there was no Aryan invasion or migration. There is zero evidence of that. Without evidence, I will not agree to this. And all the genetic evidence, it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Nothing. None at all. So there is no evidence of migration. There is no evidence of invasion. There is no evidence of a tourism. There is no evidence of picnic. Nothing. There is no invasion or evidence of an alien invasion. Also, nothing at all. Similarly, right? It's like the ancient aliens theory. It's exactly the same as that. So my point is that none of this happened. None of this happened. And let's say some people migrated, let's say hypothetically, during the decline of the IVC. See, this Indus Valley civilization, once again, we are made to imagine it was some separate civilization that existed in the past. Some mysterious people lived there and they disappeared. We have no idea where they went. The truth is that it is one of the phases of our history. The people of the so-called Indus Valley civilization were nothing but Indians. And the larger river at that time was the Saraswati, not the Indus, not the Sindhu. And it was not a separate civilization. It was Indian civilization. And all the cultural traits and characteristics that were practiced at the time, we still practice today. We do. You know, look it up. Homework. And at that time, around 1500 BC, yeah, you had climate change. The Saraswati had largely dried up in the southern part of her course. And you had a period of drought and so on. And this was actually not an isolated event localized in Western India. At the same time, you had the Bronze Age disaster in across the Mediterranean, right? So it was something that was happening globally at around this time. So yeah, right. Next question. Vidhi Maniyar says, how did experts prove that Rig Veda is the oldest existing book? Well, has any expert proved that? I would actually say that the experts are arguing it is not the oldest book. Let me show you. Proof. Let's find proof together. Come on. Okay, let's Google world's oldest literature and see what happens. See what experts say. World's. Oh man. Oh no. World's oldest literature. Okay, there we have it. Let's go to our best source ever, Wikipedia. Most reliable source ever. Let's see what it says. Oldest literature. Sumerian texts like Abul Salah Bahakik and instructions of Shupurkukakak and the Kesh temple hymn. 2600 BC. They've dated perfectly. Again, the life of Methgen and Saqqara, Egyptian. Then Egyptian diary of Merer and instructions of Harde Khadafaf. Then Sumerian hymn to Enlil and Ninlil and debate between sheep and grain. 2400 BC, Code of Uru Kakina. 2400 BC, pyramid texts, cannibal hymn, nice. Maxims of Tahotep, Palermo stone, Egyptian. Edu Hananana's hymns. Autobiography of Weni and South Saqqara stone. Epic of Gilgamesh. Sumerian king list. Self-praise of Shulgi. Code of Ur-Nammu. Satire of the trades. 2000 BC coffin text of Egypt and teachings of King Merikara. Lord of Arata, lament for Ur, Akkadian laws, Kultepe texts, eloquent peasant, Barutu, 1650 BC, dialogue between a man and his god, Hittite code of the Neslilim. Okay, what else? Venus tablet of Sikalomarka, whatever it is. Then, if we come to perhaps in where can I find something that actually 1500 BC, what do we have? Sikuru, Shakulu, Tale of Two Brothers. Yajurveda is 1200 BC apparently, right? I'm sure there is something before that somewhere, but it's 1500 BC to 1000 BC, Sanskrit Rig Veda. So this is your academic consensus that the Rig Veda was written between 1500 BC to 1000 BC. So the experts have done their best to prove that the Rig Veda is not the world's oldest book. It's very new, only 1000 BC. Nothing at all. You see? That's not. I am going against the river. I am swimming upstream. I am going against the grain. I am the one saying that the Rig Veda is the world's oldest literature. I am alone saying that. There are other Indians who say that also. I'm not the only person saying that in India. But outside of India, everybody laughs at us. Now, what you people are all Hindutwadi idiots. Your religion has messed up your brains. Oh, there is so much other literature. It's all Sumerian. See, if you look at that list that I gave you, these are all dead civilizations that they are extolling. The only living civilization in all those lists is Indian civilization. The West is okay with extolling the deeds of dead and defeated civilizations. But us, no. So experts have actually allegedly proven, that the Rig Veda was written between 1500 to 1000 BC. That's it. Closer to 1000 BC than to 1500 BC. It's nowhere as old as you people allege. And your Saraswati, it's a myth. Total myth. Nonsense. Okay, so please be cognizant of this fact. The world doesn't agree with us. The world laughs at us when we say that the Rig Veda is the oldest. What is my understanding? The Rig Veda was written closer to 6000 BC than to 1500 BC. Closer to 6000 BC than to 1500 BC. To understand why, you can look at my old videos. I have plenty of videos about that. Okay, Duryodhan Pathak says, what was the importance of war elephants in India compared to horses? How were invaders able to tackle our war elephants? So, what was the importance of war elephants compared to horses? What is the importance of aircraft carriers compared to warships? What's the importance of nuclear submarines compared to diesel submarines? What's the importance of tanks as compared to armored personnel carriers? What's the importance of fighter planes as compared to long distance strategic bombers? I think if you make these comparisons, it becomes very clear. What's the importance of war elephants, right? War elephants were akin to tanks, today's tanks. You shoot at tanks, you lob whatever tanks are mostly unhurt. Of course, today we have anti-tank missiles and all. That's a different story. So eventually, even against elephants, they developed various means of attacking elephants that were akin to anti-tank missiles today. So elephants were these huge mobile battle platforms. The elephant himself was a very scary animal who could trample the enemy and would not be hurt with conventional weapons, especially if he was armored. And from the top of the elephant, you could shoot arrows or use spears or whatever and do a tremendous amount of harm. And the first time you see an elephant coming at you unless you're a trained soldier, your blood will run cold in your body. And if you're riding a horse, your horse will just turn and run. That's the importance of war elephants. They were like, they caused shock and awe in the enemy. Eventually, invaders also took elephants. When we did the treaty 2,300 years ago between us and the Seleucid Empire, our emperor gave the Seleucid king, Seleucus Nicator, 500 war elephants as dowry or something, allegedly. And how do you deal with elephants? Once you get used to how elephants fight and so on, you can find ways, long lances and things that will genuinely hurt elephants and so on, or do something that scares elephants and so on. That sort of thing. So eventually you are able to deal with every new thing once you get used to it. Amisha Mishra says, how did Rajputs end up being confined to the state of Rajasthan? Okay. Rajputs confined to the state of Rajasthan. Let me ask a question. We all know who Ravindra Jadeja is, right? He's a Rajput. Jadeja. Where is he from? He's from Saurashtra. Where is Saurashtra? Have you seen the map today? Let's go to the map in case we are not aware of where Saurashtra is. Okay. Here is map, yes? Where is Saurashtra? Saurashtra is the jaw. If Gujarat is the face of a person, Saurashtra is the jaw. This region, Rajkot, Junagadh, all that, Jamnagar, Bhavnagar. Where is Porbandar, where Mr. Gandhi was born? Here is Porbandar. And of course, you have Dwarka here, you have Somnath here. So this is Saurashtra. And Mr. Jadeja, Ravindra Singh Jadeja, is from Saurashtra. He's a Rajput. So is he from Rajasthan? He's not from Rajasthan. He's from Gujarat, Saurashtra. And once again, if you go to the map, there are many Rajputs who don't live in Rajasthan. Lots of them live in Gujarat. There used to be this region called Rajputana, which was Gujarat and Rajasthan combined. That's where you had Rajputs, and today also the descendants of those Rajputs, they live across Rajasthan, Gujarat, even other parts of India. So it's not correct. We are made to believe that Rajasthan is a state where Rajputs live. Rajasthan, Rajputs, the land of the Rajputs and so on, but it's not quite true. Then you have to ask yourself, what do we mean by this term Rajput? It comes from the old Sanskrit term Rajyaputra, which is a term that emerged sometime in the second millennium AD. Around 1000 AD, nobody called themselves Rajput. And the term did not exist. But eventually, after the Turkic invasions and occupation of various parts of India, this term emerged at some point in time. These people are Rajputs or Rajputras, which meant the descendants of the old ruling families of India. Apparently, there were 33 ruling families, and you can look up the list. So, 33 ancient ruling families dating back to the late Vedic times who ruled various parts of India. So the royalty, the old royalty of India, the old legitimate royalty of India, their descendants were called the Rajaputras, Rajputs. And they were spread across even UP and other parts of India. But eventually we got this imaginary idea that only Rajasthan is the land of Rajputs, which is not true at all. All right. Shubh says, why is only the Gupta Empire credited with the golden age of India, considering we had other powerful and efficiently organized empires such as the Mauryas, the Cholas, the Kushans, etc.? What did the Gupta kings do differently? I'm not sure what they did differently. Why is the Gupta era considered the golden age of India? I think during the Maurya dynasty era, the Mauryan Empire era, we also had a golden age. The whole of the subcontinent was united. We had, at the time, we had both the Dharma, which was the major thing for some time, at least during Ashok's time. During one of his descendants' time, he was all after Jainism. He built like thousands of Jain temples and so on. And it was always like that way. All the various aspects of Dharma were taken care of. And of course, you had a tremendous efflorescence of culture during the Maurya era, during the Kushan era. Fantastic era. At that time, the Kushan Empire, it encompassed all of northern India, much of Central Asia from the Caspian Sea to the Aral Sea, and all of present-day so-called Xinjiang of China. So Emperor Kanishka, one of our greatest emperors, he controlled the trade between the East and the West. He obviously was he obviously was controlling India's trade with the West, which is Rome at the time. But he was also taxing the Chinese and the Europeans when they were trading with each other, because he controlled all the lands in between. It made India tremendously wealthy. Tremendously wealthy. Definitely a golden age. Right? Kanishka's time. Kanishka was a very vigorous guy. And his entire strategy, if you think of it, was a mercantile strategy. It was a trade, it was an economic strategy to control the world's economy by controlling the right parts of the world. And that's what he did brilliantly. Right? And that made India super, super wealthy. Tremendous amounts of gold was flowing into India every year because of the genius of Shri Kanishka. And he used that to spread India's culture far and wide. He Indianized the whole of Eastern Asia. East of India, everything was Indianized, starting with his efforts. Of course, when it comes to Suvarna Bhumi and all, it started about 1,000 years before him because of the great merchants of Kalinga. That's a different story. But China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia, all of that was Indianized through Kanishka's efforts. So Kanishka's age was definitely a golden age. The Mauryan age was definitely a golden age. The Gupta era, no question, it was a golden age. Tremendous outpouring of culture and tremendous prosperity, tremendous military power, strength and power, all of that. Yeah, so that's also a golden age. The Cholas, why is that not a golden age? Tremendous prosperity once again, control of so much maritime trade and whatnot, the conquest of Srivijaya, the vassalization of the entirety of Southeast Asia, all the way up to the Philippines in a non-colonial, non-oppressive way. All these eras are golden eras. I have no idea why only the Gupta era is considered the golden era. I am a huge fan of the Gupta emperors, no question, but I would say it's unfair to consider only the Gupta period to be a golden period of India. I would say even the Satavahanas, that period was a golden period, at least in the central part of India. They were very able rulers, the Satavahanas. Even the Mahakshatrapas, the Western satraps, they brought in a golden era in India. They were controlling the trade between India and Rome through the great ports in Saurashtra and Western India. And they made India tremendously wealthy. And they were great patrons of culture. I would say all of these eras were golden eras in their own way. Right? So I don't agree that only the Gupta era was a golden era of India. Nothing else was golden. We had multiple golden periods in India. Yajnavalkya says, is the conquest and rule over India by the British falsely overhyped by the Anglophiles as an extraordinary event? Since similar things were true and perhaps more so of the Turkic conquests of various parts of India. For example, the number of foreign officials in India during Aurangzeb's rule was perhaps much less compared to the then population of India, and most of the Timurid army may also likely be composed of native Indian soldiers, regrettably. The foreign conquerors who initially established the Delhi Sultanate and the Timurid Empire in India were from regions of West Asia or Central Asia, like Babur from Uzbekistan, which were comparable or less than England in terms of area and population. So, is the conquest and rule over India by the British falsely overhyped? To a very large extent, it is. Now, I'll tell you, it's a little subtle. Understand this. The British also started just like the Turks, with a toehold somewhere in India. They first established, I think in 1600 and something, 1610 or something, a factory in Surat in Western India, in South Gujarat. Then they also established something in what eventually became Kolkata, Fort St. George's, whatever the hell it was called. And eventually they slowly expanded over the centuries their foothold in India, and eventually they defeated the Marathas, and then they ruled India, and so on. So they kind of followed the same pattern that the Mughals did, the Turkic occupiers of India, the Mughal dynasty. Even they started with a small foothold in India. They kind of lost it for a while to a native Sher Shah Suri. Well, you will say that Sher Shah Suri was Afghan, but he was native to the subcontinent, right? He was from Gandhar. He was not from Central Asia. And Sher Shah's soldiers, most of them were actually Indians. And his successor was a Hindu, Hemachandra Vikramaditya, last Hindu emperor of Delhi. So the Mughals had this, and the Mughal Empire lasted about 300 years or something. That's it. And the British Empire eventually lasted about 2.5 or 300 years, more or less, in India. But what was extraordinary about the British is that they colonized much of the known world. That is something the Mughals and the Turks could not do. So that is what was extraordinary about the British. They surpassed the Mughals in their brutality and in their ability to rule over very large portions of the world and to coordinate the empire from London. That is something they surpassed the Mughals in. So that certainly is extraordinary, the extent to which they were able to expand their empire. The sun never set on the British Empire. And the crown jewel of the British Empire was obviously India, because that's where like 80-90% of the wealth was coming from, the plunder of India. So you are right. The examples you give are absolutely correct. The Mughals, the Turks also, they did something actually perhaps initially better than the British. But eventually the British surpassed everybody by conquering so many parts of the world and occupying them. Yajnavalkya says, were Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Malaysia, and Indonesia Buddhist majority among the masses, not speaking about rulers, just before their conversion to Islam? You seem to be a person who studies patterns in world history, and you have uncovered a very interesting pattern, and the answer to your question is yes. So it all when it comes to the Indian subcontinent, it starts with Gandhar, which is now Afghanistan. Gandhar was mostly Buddhist around that time, around 1,000 years before today. So 1,000 years ago, you don't have a single Muslim in Gandhar. And today you don't have a single non-Muslim in Gandhar. That's what's happened. So yes, Gandhar was mainly Buddhist. Pakistan, what is now Pakistan, was then Punjab. Pakistan, it happened later. Pakistan did not. What is now Pakistan did not fall to the Turks at the same time as Gandhar. It took centuries more for what is now Pakistan to fall to Gandhar. So not Pakistan, Gandhar 100%, which is now Afghanistan. It was essentially very significantly Buddhist majority at the time. When it comes to Malaysia, Indonesia, these parts of the world were for the longest time Hindu kingdoms, but around the time they became Islamized or converted to Islam, they had become Buddhist cultures. So there seems to be a correlation between Buddhism and Islam. There does. So regions that are Buddhist majority convert very rapidly to Islam, and regions that are Hindu majority fight, still fight. That's a pattern you see, indeed. What's the reason for that? Yeah, well, that's you don't ask me that question, so I'll not go into it. Okay. A question about the history of science and physics. Okay. Rahul Dunake says, why did Einstein win the Nobel for the photoelectric effect and not for theories of relativity, special and general relativity, which were most groundbreaking theories of all time? Wasn't Einstein worthy enough to have three Nobels undisputedly? If you look back at history today, and if you look back at Einstein's contributions to our understanding of the universe, how many of his theories deserve the Nobel Prize? Special relativity, 100%. General relativity, it deserves 10 Nobel Prizes, at least one. So that's two. Photoelectric effect, absolutely. It brought the quantum world into the mainstream. The photon, right? The quantum of light, and so on. So three is there. You have three there. And then you have Brownian motion. Again, a 1905 paper, which proved that atoms exist. Until that paper was published, people did not believe in the existence of atoms. His work on Brownian motion was groundbreaking. It should have been awarded a Nobel Prize. So even if you combine special and general relativity into just one theory of relativity, that makes it three Nobel Prizes. Work that is far better than anything that is being given Nobel Prizes today. So Einstein deserved at least three Nobel Prizes, at least three. And the Nobel Prize is a very controversial prize. There have been lots of controversies. For example, ECG Sudarshan. He has been denied the Nobel Prize multiple times. He's no longer alive now. Electroweak theory. Abdus Salam, Weinberg, and Glashow. They were awarded the Nobel Prize for that electroweak theory. Their entire work was based on work that Sudarshan had done as a 25-year-old or something. So you award the Nobel Prize for a building, but the person who constructed the foundation, you don't give the prize to that person. Why? Then once again, this guy called Glauber, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2000 something for something called the P representation, which was a stolen idea of Sudarshan, which Sudarshan had already published way before Glauber, and Glauber actually opposed that. But then he realized that that Sudarshan's work actually makes sense. So then he renamed it to the P representation, and today it's called the Glauber-Sudarshan representation, even though Sudarshan was the person who came with it first. So Sudarshan has been unfairly kept out of the Nobel Prize thing, which obviously, right? What about Bose? Not Subhash Chandra Bose, Satyendranath Bose. Nobel Prizes have been given for the Bose-Einstein condensate and other things related to the Bose-Einstein statistics, but the person who published the work, who discovered the statistics first, was Bose, Satyendranath Bose. He was never given the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prizes were given to work done on the basis of his work, but not to Bose himself. And it should not even be called the Bose-Einstein statistics. It should be called the Bose statistics. Einstein merely recommended his paper. He translated the paper into German and submitted it to Annalen der Physik or something. And then it was called Bose-Einstein statistics. It should be called only the Bose statistics. Einstein had no contribution in that. So you have many such controversies in the history of physics. So why did Einstein win for the photoelectric effect, not for other things? So Einstein won the Nobel Prize in 1920, 21 perhaps. And at that time, see, the Nobel committee is very conservative. They don't want to cause controversy, apparently, even though they can cause all kinds of huge controversies. And they want to give the Nobel Prize to work that is 100% proven and nobody can question it. So by that time in 1921, or whenever it was given, the photoelectric effect was very well proven experimentally. There was no question about it anymore. That's why they gave it for that. By at that time, relativity was still kind of being proven. In 1919, I think Eddington and his teams had demonstrated that light was bent by the sun as per Einstein's predictions, not as per Newton's predictions, which means that Einstein is correct. But it was only until the 1960s and 70s that Einstein was completely 100% vindicated. And in 2015, even gravitational waves were discovered. Uh, but in 2015, Einstein was no longer alive. Even in 1970, he was no longer alive. So that's why I think that's why they decided to give it only for the photoelectric effect and not for the other things. He should have won at least 3 Nobel Prizes. There have been people who won more than one Nobel Prize. Einstein should have won at least three, and Sudarshan should have won at least two. Rahul Dunake says, why did a paper on quantum tunneling written way back in 1985 receive the Nobel Prize in 2025? I think the Nobel Committee has this unofficial policy today that we will not award a Nobel Prize to a young person. We will award a Nobel Prize only to people who are above 80 or 75 or 80 years old. I think, or at least above 70. Nobody who is actively doing research should be awarded a Nobel Prize because it will encourage them too much. Give it to people who are done. People who are just waiting for the knock from Yamaraj. Give it to those people only. I don't know what the deal is. I'm sure if you look at statistics, let's try and Google that. Can you find it? Let's see. Physics Nobel Prize age. Physics Nobel Prize recipients age over the years. Do we have a graph somewhere? Do we have a graph? Not chemistry, physiology, age when received Nobel Prize. See, as you see, it's trending upwards, but it is not showing it as markedly as they should show it. I'm not sure anybody has done this thing. Physics. So in what is this? Nobel Prizes, cumulative number of... Anyway, my point is that in the early 19th century, people used to win Nobel Prizes when they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s. The youngest is about 25. Bragg, the younger Bragg, if I'm not mistaken. Crystal diffraction, I think. Yeah. But today, if you look at the average age of a Nobel Prize winner, it's in their 70s and 80s. So they have possibly this unofficial policy that don't give it to young people. Only give it to people who are done, finished, retired, who have nothing more to contribute. I don't know why, but yeah. No understanding why. They could have given the Nobel Prize in 1986 itself for this work because it was experimental work. Quantum tunneling of quintillions of Cooper pairs, right? They could have done it and given this prize in 1986 itself. When those guys were young, they would have been motivated to do more great work. But they're giving it now when they're done, over the hill. No wonder. I don't understand why. Why? Shubh says whenever there are two great powers in the world, it makes sense for them to become rivals of each other. Then why did ancient Chinese and ancient Indian empires, why were they not rivals? Then their spheres of interest never overlapped. Never overlapped. The Thucydides trap occurs only when there are overlapping areas of interest, geographical areas of interest, or economic areas of interest. That is what causes rivalries. But if you have two great powers who are situated far apart, see, today we think of, I'll explain what the problem is. Okay? And I'll explain how to reframe our understanding. See, today we think of India and China like this. So in the year 100 AD, you had India like this and China like this. This is what we imagine. And we were both great powers, so why did we not become rivals? Arey bhai, in 100 AD, China was only confined to the eastern part of what is China. And this entire Xinjiang region, etc., was no man's land, or it belonged to the Tibetans and other people. So understand that today's map of the world is not, the map was not, it doesn't represent what the situation was like 100,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago. What was China like in 100 AD? Let's Google that. Map of China 100 AD. Let's Google that. Then you will understand. Map of China 100 AD. What did China look like in 100 AD? You see how far it was from India? Those days we had no aircraft, we had no telecommunications, no helicopters, no railways. It took months to come from China to India. So do you understand now? Look, this was China, so far away from India. 100 AD. So because of this, there were no overlapping zones of interest where the interests of the two empires would have collided. It never happened. There was always Tibet. There was always other territories in between India and China. So today's China doesn't represent the real China. The real China is far to the east. All other territories are non-Chinese territories that have been occupied by China. Understand that. The Baron Zemo says, is history itself a weapon of geopolitics, where narratives are more important than facts? If so, is India currently winning or losing the battle of historical narratives globally? Napoleon Bonaparte said that history is a set of lies agreed upon. History has always been something you can use to set narratives. History has always been, from time to time, a different set of lies. It also depends on the cultural context. The West has weaponized history. They are the ones who have been spreading fake histories. If you look at Indian records of history, you will not find fake histories here. But history today is a weapon of geopolitics. For example, today everyone is taught in India. We had several questions today about the Aryan Dravidian theory, Aryan invasion migration theory, that India is made up of two separate distinct races, Aryans and Dravidians, and Aryans are the evil oppressors and Dravidians are the rightful natives of India, and we Aryans should go back to Central Asia or something. People believe that. People believe, and because of the government which has weaponized caste reservations and all, people believe that they are the true Mool Nivasis of India and they have been oppressed for thousands of years by Aryans and they are not Hindus. So this is weaponization of history. This is the perpetuation of fake narratives. In India, everyone is guilty of this. The old history professors from the 20th century, many history professors today, the government of India itself, and so many other institutions and all are propagating fake history. The objective is to divide the nation further. The government may be doing it for votes because you have to win votes, otherwise you lose elections. So continue this nonsense. Continue these fake theories, right? And all these theories were initiated by the West to divide India. The British excelled at this divide and rule policy. How do you divide and rule? By making the natives fight among each other. They should regard each other as enemies so that we can rule over them as the benevolent rulers. Oh no, don't fight. We will solve your problems. We will mediate in your disputes. First, we will create the disputes. We'll make you fight each other. Then we will be the peacemakers. So both sides will see us as the good guys who are trying their best to have peace, who are civilizing us. You do that by creating fake history. Aryan versus Dravidian, these two fake identities, right? And then caste system. That caste system was a means of oppression, and so many other things. So is India currently winning or losing the battle of historical narratives globally? India is not fighting the war of historical narratives. We are not fighting. We are not participating. We will simply stand and watch and let things happen to us. We are nowhere a participant in this battle of historical narratives. Maybe individuals are fighting. Individuals don't matter. It's only when people come together collectively under strong leadership that something can happen. And we don't have that strong leadership in India today. It doesn't exist. Our leadership may be doing great work in constructing infrastructure and so on, taking care of the economy, doing a good job geopolitically, taking care of the military. But when it comes to narratives, when it comes to promoting culture, safeguarding culture, making India a better place for future generations, I am not sure it's a great job is being done right now. Okay, I am done with today's questions. Let's take some questions from the live chat. Oh, good God, we have some super chats today. Okay, I'll take. Please don't take any more super chats, please, because I'm going to end the live stream soon. So please don't take any more super chats. Super chats we can take some other time. Satellite is a new member. Satellite, sir, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Biju Sai says during the Vedic period, Lord Indra was the most prayed to god by Hindus. Today, we don't pray to Lord Indra anymore. Why? What happened? We are so old as a civilization that new gods come up or new manifestations of gods came up. Right? See, other religions have such short history that nothing has changed much. They pray to the same gods. During the Vedic period, Lord Indra was prayed to, right? The most worshipped god by Indians. During the Vedic time, they had stopped praying to a different god, Dyoshpitru, the oldest of the Aryan gods. How much is he mentioned in the Rig Veda, Dyoshpitru? The oldest of the Vedic gods, of the Aryan gods, are Dyoshpitru and Prithvi Mata. Who worships them today? Who worshipped them even during the Vedic period? I'm sure there are some references to them in the Rig Veda, etc., but nothing compared to Shri Indra, Lord Indra. And Lord Indra was the great, mighty warrior god who destroyed Vritra, right? The great serpent with his Vajra, which is a hammer and a thunderbolt in one, combined in one. But over time, things changed. New names came in. The great god who was called Rudra is now called Shiva, right? And Indra has been relegated to a political kind of god who sits in a parliament kind of thing with surrounded by other gods and plays politics. And he's the god of rain today. So you see how much time has passed and how much Indian society has evolved. It's a natural process, evolution of society, evolution of beliefs. But this sort of change happens only over thousands of years. It indicates how old and ancient our civilization is and how much things have changed. So Indra was regarded as the god of the thunder and rain, and also the great warrior god. But maybe Indra did not give us what we wanted at some point in time. Indra, through his lack of benevolence, caused the death of the Saraswati. So maybe that's why people stopped praying to Indra. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe some other reason. I'm not sure. But yeah. Okay. Nikhil Gangal. Well, good to see you, sir. Thank you. Could you tell us something about Jains? People today treat it as a separate religion from Hinduism, but Shivalingams are found in temples like Chota Kailash and the lore. Festivals and traditions all overlap. See, sir, I am not any kind of expert in Jainism. I am not the right person to ask this question. Maybe in the future I can have somebody who can explain Jaina Dharma to us properly. I have not studied Jaina Dharma. So if I say something, I may be ignorant and I may end up telling you something that is not correct. So it is better that I don't venture into this. I'm not the right person to ask this question. Sorry, very sorry. Sanatan says, please throw some lights on the Pala kingdom. Once again, it's not something I've studied in detail. See, this is the thing about history. See, I've had Dr. Meenakshi Jain on my podcast many times. You ask her about something that she has not researched, she will tell you straight to your face, this is not my cup of tea. History is so vast that if you take a very prominent historian and you ask questions about things that they have not studied or researched, they will say, I don't know. This is not part of my forte. So about this, I have to say, I don't know much. Pala Kingdom. Not sure. Biju Sai wants to ask a geopolitics question because today let's do geopolitics in a history session, right? Arey sir, ask me tomorrow. Okay, you're talking about dissolution of USSR. That we can consider to be a history question. Okay, when you said CIA and all, I was like, well, what? So did CIA or deep state have any contribution to the dissolution of the USSR, or the entire credit goes to Mr. Gorbachev? The entire credit cannot go to Mr. Gorbachev. It cannot. It cannot. Of course, the deep state, of course, the CIA, of course, the US had a significant contribution to the dissolution of the USSR in a variety of ways. The entire credit cannot go to Mr. Gorbachev. They did squeeze, they did not let up the squeeze on the USSR in all kinds of ways: economic squeeze, power projection squeeze, naval squeeze, other squeeze, all of that. So the US did have a significant contribution, but probably Gorbachev's contribution was probably somewhat larger. Here, Kumar Patel says, who Islamized Indonesia? Merchants, Arab merchants is what we see, what we hear. That Arab merchants started trading with Suvarna Bhumi, with Indonesia, Sumatra, and Yavadvip and all, and they settled there, and eventually they spread their religion, and that's how it happened. That's what we're told. It was not a conquest; it was just that sort of thing. What's the origin and impact of matriarchy? I belong to a patriarchal civilization, so I don't know. I haven't studied matriarchy, sir. I have no idea. I understand patriarchy. I come from a patriarchal culture. Super male toxic culture. Okay, Aryan culture. Indian civilization. We are patriarchal. We have some minor matriarchal subcultures in India, so like somewhere in southern India and somewhere in the far east of India. But that's not something I understand very well. So, Cinnamon says, why was the concept of a king with a hereditary lineage ruling his kingdom? Why was this almost wiped out after World War II? What's the link? Well, after World War II, you had other powers who wanted to establish their primacy. So, for example, you have something called the deep state. Maybe maybe they belong to certain lineages who want to stay hidden. So, if you ask Chamath Palihapitiya, who is an American businessman of Sri Lankan origin, if you ask him, he will say that there are 150 people, men, who rule the world, and they are deeply hidden. That's the deep state, obviously. Would you like me to show you what I am talking about? Am I talking conspiracy theories? Okay, let's see. Chamath Palihapitiya, 150 men. There's about 150 people who run the world. Okay, in a 2017 appearance at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, he said that approximately 150 men control a majority of the world's wealth and power. This powerful group is not made of tech entrepreneurs. They operate outside the public eye to influence global, etc., etc., etc. Okay? What is he talking about? He's talking about the deep state. Now, these people want to stay hidden so that they can have even more power. If you're visible, then you are accountable. If you're invisible, you can be the power behind the act, what seems to be the power. And then you have no accountability. You can do anything you want. So you destroy the hereditary lineages. You mediocreize society. See, when you impose democracy on a society which used to have the hereditary system, kings and emperors, then you are bringing the standards down. You're bringing the standards down to the lowest common denominator. Democracy is a lowering of standards. It is the rule of the mob. It is the rule of the average IQ, not the highest IQ. Right? That way you can rule the whole world. If you make the whole world mediocre, if you impose mediocre systems on the entire world, if you have mediocre politicians getting elected who implement mediocre systems, mediocre policies, mediocre education systems, then you, with your higher intellect and hidden behind the scenes, can rule the whole world. That's what they've done. I have requested, please don't take any more super chats. Anyway, I'll take the remaining super chats and then let's end this. Amisha says, why have men dominated history? Historically, we have been hunter-gatherers. Historically, we have been a very violent species. We still are a very violent species. It's in our DNA. Now, because of the way the genders are biologically, we have different gender roles. Men are more muscular, larger, stronger. That's just biological fact, right? Males. And this is seen in multiple species apart from humans. You look at lions, for example. Males are like way larger than females. I suppose it also applies to other species of mammals and so on, but we'll talk about humans here. So historically, it's been like this, that because of our society being so violent, because of our species being so violent, men had to take care of all the fighting, war fighting and all, and decision making, because they were in the middle of the war and everything, on fighting on a regular basis. They understood what decisions were necessary for that. And women's role was to stay at home, stay away from the violence, and raise the next generations. And that is essentially the reason why men have dominated history. Okay. 67 6P70 Delta says, your opinion on Brezhnev. What I can tell you, he was a heavy, heavy smoker. if you if you hear his speeches, he has this smoker's cough. That's his teeth are all tobacco stain and all. I am sure he was a very heavy smoker. Apart from that, that was okay. And nothing special. Yeah. Brezhnev. Yes, Tovarish. Ankita says, good evening, Ankita ji. Some people refer to Europe as a civilization, saying it's an attack on European civilization due to migration from Islamic nations. Does it qualify? Does it qualify to be a civilization? Does it have the characteristics of a civilization? I do not agree that Europe is one civilization. It's not. If you look at Europe just 100 years ago, they had so many little principalities and states and nations and kingdoms and duchies, and all fighting each other. All had very, very different ways of life. If you look at France 100 years ago, 150 years ago, they had like 15 different languages, all sounding same but different languages, different clothings, different attires, different ways of life. The Provençal language was very different from the French language, significantly different, right? The Languedoc. If you look at Italy, you had so many languages. So it has all been artificially subsumed into these big, big chunks. And today they call it a European civilization. If you go back to the United States of 150, 200 years ago, the Anglos did not even consider the Swedes to be white. They did not like people who had migrated to the US from Sweden. They did not consider them to be white people. They used to complain that they smell and they are subhuman. They used to consider the Irish to be non-white. You call this a civilization? This is an artificial idea that they have come up with recently. It's a racist idea that the whites, now they've accepted that Irish are white and the Swedish are also white. Earlier it was only the Anglos who were white. I do not agree at all that Europe is a civilization. There is no such thing as European civilization. There is no such thing as Western civilization. There may be something called Russian civilization, perhaps. There was something called Greek civilization. It's dead. There is no such thing as Western civilization or European civilization. I completely disagree with this notion. Completely. And I can argue with anybody based on actual definitions. I look like, how dare you? I look like Brezhnev in sunglasses. I don't look Russian. He's Indian, man. He's not Russian. What do you talk about, sir? How can I look Russian? I'm Indian. In sunglasses. Okay. Okay, let us end on this really funny note. I always enjoy a good joke. All right, people. Okay, I'll end this over here. Really had fun doing all this. Thank you so much, everybody, for the questions. I always try to take okay, look at this. Look at this evil people who are saying evil things about me. I look like an evil Aryan. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? All right, people. Thank you so much, everyone. Always fun chatting to you all. Tomorrow we shall take geopolitics questions. It's going to be a geopolitics super chat live stream. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm sure it'll go way past 2 hours. And I look forward to seeing you in that. And a lot is happening in the world geopolitically. So let's discuss all of that tomorrow. Afghanistan, Taliban, and so much more. Okay, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care. Keep asking questions. Keep raising your standards. Keep learning. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Good day. Good night, wherever you are. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.